Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some ProRevenge. Our first story today comes to us from Aaron Sky, Bag of Nails. Let's jump right in. I am a dry liner, which means I do a lot of moving around for my trade, as most of the work I do is towards the end of most projects. This means that I spend a lot of my time renting flats and houses for only short periods, usually about 6 months at a time. This has meant that I have had to deal with a lot of landlords over the years, both good and bad. When it comes to the bad landlords, I will normally just walk away and get on with moving to the next job and take the loss of my deposit and never use them again if I'm working in that area in the future. But this particular landlord got my back up so badly, I was not just going to walk away. I had managed to get myself into a big job in London working on the new Wembley Stadium, so decided I would look for a house to rent rather than a flat, as I knew I was going to be working on it for a while, and found a reasonably priced, for London, house to rent from a private landlord in a local newspaper. I gave him a call and meet with him later that day. He seemed okay. Went to view the house, paid him the deposit, cash, and moved in that weekend. I ended staying in the house for nearly a year with no problems. Always had the rent paid into his bank account on time, and fixed any small problems that might crop with the house myself without bothering him. Up to the time when it came to moving out, only ever spoke with him twice on the phone after there was an issue with the heating that I was unable to fix myself, and he sent an engineer around the next day to fix the boiler. Come the time that the job was finishing, I went round to the pawn shop that he owned to give him notice that I would be moving out the following month, and to let him know that I was happy for him to come round to inspect the house before I moved out, so that I could get my deposit back from him when I returned my keys. He never came round while I was in to inspect the house, so I assumed that he had come round and let himself in while I was at work, as I had told him that I had no issue with him doing that if need be. So on the day I moved out, I went around the shop and handed him his keys back and asked for my deposit. His response was, "What deposit? The month's rent that I gave you in advance of moving in as a security deposit?" I replied. He then told me he was keeping that to cover the cost of repairing damages caused while I was living in the property. I responded, "What damages?" With the bits of work and decorating I had done on the house, it was in a better state now than when I had moved into it. His response was to step forward and get right up into my face and say, "You're not getting it back, so F off." And he then gave me a shove, which needed me to take 3 steps back to avoid falling on my arse. Now, I am what you would class as average size and build, and this landlord had a good 4 inches on me height-wise, and obviously spent some downtime in the gym, and the wise move would be to back away and cut my losses. Now, before I was a builder, I was a member of the British Army in a regiment called the Royal Green Jackets, and they had trained us that the best way to proceed when confronted with aggression is to meet it swiftly and with much more violent aggression. So without even thinking about it, I started to move forward with the full intention of dropping this tea quickly and painfully. After the first step though, a thought popped into my head like a bolt from the blue, so I stopped and took a moment to examine the idea from a few different angles, said, "Okay, bye," to my now ex-landlord and walked out of his shop. What the landlord did not know was that I had a spare backdoor key cut when I had lived in the house, which I had stashed in my van in case I ever lost the keys, so I could still get back in. So later that evening I let myself back in and decided to stop for one last night before leaving in the morning for my next job, which was in Scotland. I spent the last night in the house carefully removing every bit of wood in there. I took down doors, removed skirting boards, banisters, architrave, and floorboards, and being extremely careful not to damage anything. I also completely dismantled all the kitchen units, took up the wood flooring and carpets. I then left everything in nice neat piles in each room. I got in my van the next morning and was preparing to start my drive when I decided I wanted to rub a little more salt into my ex-landlord's wounds. So I stopped at his shop on the way out of London, got a spare hammer, screwdriver, bag of nails, and a box of wood screws out of the back of my van and went into the shop. My ex-landlord was not there, probably for the best, so I left the tools with his confused-looking assistant and told her to tell her boss, "You will be needing these," and left for my drive north. I had my phone switched off while driving, and a few hours later, while I was having a bite to eat in a service station up by Nottingham, I decided to switch it back on and was greeted by a string of text messages and some very colorful voice messages, which left me chuckling to myself. OP added an edit at the end of the story. It says, "Edit." I did reply to one of the texts he sent me. The text was, "Do you think you're effing funny leaving me nails and screws?" I only responded, "Yes." I think OP was actually really nice to this landlord, leaving things in nice, tidy piles. I would have been the kind of person who would have kind of mixed everything up so you had some random piles, and then put some in each room of the house. So maybe in the bathroom, you'd have like 2 doors, a couple of baseboards, maybe a couple of other fixtures from the kitchen, who knows, whatever, just in random spots so that they have to sort everything out first and try and figure out where it all goes back in the house. Do me a quick favor and take a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're actually not subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from Mr. Gimp 858. Mess with my wife, I'll take your rank. Let's jump right in. Back in 2013, I was transferred from sunny San Diego to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I had been in the Marines for over 4 years and had been sent to a unit that would finally give me the chance to deploy to Afghanistan. In case you don't know, before your unit deploys overseas, you have a mountain of classes and training to get done, which starts around 6 months or so prior to the date. I had become close friends with Joe, who was my senior-most corporal. I was the only sergeant in my platoon, and we hung out all the time outside of work. We would barbecue, go to the gym, have parties with the families, etc. Well, that fateful time comes, and we get sent to the land of never-ending sand. About 4 months in, I start to get a funny feeling that something was not right, due to the lack of being able to talk to my wife on the phone or Facebook Messenger. I do have a special skill that I honed from sneaking past my Vietnam veteran father, who was very set in that bedtime meant bedtime and not raid the fridge for snacks time. I am very quiet and you won't hear me coming unless I want you to. One day, I came into our peb, just a big container that housed around 8 people in it, and seen my wife's face on the video chat of my best friend Joe, who didn't hear me until I shut the door. I played it off like nothing, and the rest of the deployment had moments just like this, where I would see or hear them talking and just take notes for my revenge. Before things really got to me mentally, our time in the sandbox was coming to an end and we flew home. The homecoming was uneventful other than my 2-year-old not realizing who I was for a few minutes. Then it was happiness all around. Just like before deploying, we have a mountain of classes after we get back to scan for TBI, traumatic brain injuries, mental health awareness, certifications, etc., and nobody was exempt from completing the various death by PowerPoint classes that were scheduled for that week. Out of nowhere, Joe had random appointments almost every day, or something would come up where Joe would have to leave while everyone else was stuck all day long at a class, or at a medical getting screened for everything under the sun. Do you ever have the feeling that your gut is telling you 100% that something is going on, but your brain is like, no, stop being paranoid? Well, that's what I was dealing with on a daily basis. I began to follow Joe a few days a week when he would leave work early or have to make a call. And sure enough, his car would be right outside my house every single time. When I finally confronted Joe, he denied it up and down like I was going crazy, and genuinely made me feel like I was offending him by the accusations. I quietly compiled the evidence and brought it all to the battalion sergeant major, who, if you don't know, is the top of the food chain under the battalion commander. After a week or so, I get called into the battalion commander's office to discuss his findings and to ask me what I want to happen. My answer is simple. I want his rank. Justice came swift and painful. Joe was awarded loss of rank, forfeiture of 1/2 month's pay for 2 months, restriction, and extra duties. Shortly after we came back to the States, Joe was promoted to sergeant, and in less than a month, his rank was gone. I heard from mutual friends that he left his wife to be with his new girlfriend, who is also pregnant with his 3rd son. Oh, and in case you're wondering, I was trying to stay with my wife for my son, but I found that was a huge mistake. A few months after the dust settled, I was transferred back to San Diego to go on a cruise, and my wife and I were giving this our last shot. I went underway for 2 weeks, and guess where she flies to? His house to have their last bit of time together. After I found all of this out, I just lost any interest in being nice and making it work. I deployed on the ship and actually met my new wife there. We've been together ever since, and I've been much happier than when I was being mentally tortured by my ex. Moral of the story, don't screw your best friend's wife. Okay, call me completely wrong here if you want to, but if you're cheating with somebody, why would you park your car in their driveway or in front of their house so that you could be seen there? I mean, you're a friggin' moron. Check out both OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.